Hey everybody, Eric here for another trip down memory lane. This time we're talking about May of 1985. I don't have any music or movie trivia this week, so we're going to get right into the books that I read in May of 1985. Number one, we have When the Wind Blows by John Saul. And I'm not a huge fan of John Saul. I've enjoyed some of his books, but a lot of them felt very repetitive. I think maybe this was one of them. I'm thinking it was, but this may be a gross overgeneralization, but I can give you the breakdown of a lot of his books right now. 100 years ago, there's some kid being picked on. That kid dies. Present day, a new family with a kid the same age moves into town. That kid becomes possessed by the spirit of the dead kid from 100 years ago, and craziness ensues. That's the feeling I got from a lot of the John Saul books I read. I can't say for sure that when the Wind Blows was exactly like that, but I did look on Amazon, and it does mention some crap that happened 50 years ago or so, and then a new family moves in, so I think it was the same kind of thing. But he's a pretty creepy writer. He did write some things that I enjoyed. This one's not that memorable to me. Number two, we have The Hour of the Gate by Alan Dean Foster. This is the second Spellsinger novel. As I mentioned last time, they're fun fantasy books. You've got a human from Earth that's in this new magical world. He's a musician, so his songs create magic, and his companions are a talking otter, and I think there's a bat and a turtle, and they're fighting. In this particular book, they're fighting the Plated Army that wants to destroy all mammals or some such nonsense. Number three, Reverend Randolph and the Avenging Angel by Charles Merrill Smith. Mr. Smith is a pastor, or was a pastor at least, I believe. He's back in 1985. This is part of the Reverend Randolph Mystery Series. And Randolph was a pastor in Chicago. And in this book, again, I had to look it up, he performs a wedding and a funeral in the same week. And unfortunately, they're for the same person. The bride at the wedding is murdered, and Reverend Randolph is going to solve the mystery. It was just one of those, I guess it would fall into the cozy mystery type series, I suppose, but just a general mystery book. Alright, number four, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. You may be surprised that I do not have this book to show you, but this has got to be the funniest book I have ever read. I don't think that this is the first time I ever read it. And the reason I don't have one is because I'm always giving my copies away to people who haven't read it. And I think everyone should. It's, I've never seen the movie or the TV show, but I've read the book numerous times. It is so freaking funny. Absolutely hilarious book. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you haven't read it, I'm not going to force you to, but really, if you want to laugh, if you like British humor, absolutely hilarious. Next, number five, Long After Midnight by Ray Bradbury. It's just a short story collection. Lots of Ray Bradbury goodness. I actually got to meet Ray Bradbury when I lived in California. Unfortunately, it was a last-minute thing. I just found out about it. I did not have any of his books with me for him to sign, so I did not get an autographed Ray Bradbury book. But I did get to meet him, which was pretty cool. Long After Midnight, like I said, short stories. Bunch of Ray Bradbury short stories, which are always good. Next, I have this book. Planet of the Apes by Pierre Boulet. I'm not sure how you say it. I have this copy, which is a 3D copy. It even comes with old-fashioned 3D glasses, so I can take a nice look and be scared by the ape with a cigar that's popping out of the cover. This is not the copy of the book I read. I found this at Half Price Bookstore and had to grab it because it's 3D. I love that old-fashioned 3D. Planet of the Apes, great book. I'm a huge fan of the movies, except for one particular version. The book is a bit different. The ending is definitely different than the original Charlton Heston movie. I don't want to say too much for anybody who might want to pick it up and read it. I don't want to spoil the ending, but just a fantastic book. If you're a fan of the movies, I say pick it up and read it. Next we have The Ivanhoe Gambit by Simon Hawke. This is part of his Time Wars series. Don't remember, it's probably number 3 or 4, I would think. I really dug this series. The idea was that in the future, whenever there was any type of conflict between countries, instead of going to war and messing things up, they would each send back a certain number of soldiers, I guess, to a war that's already happened. The Civil War, the French Revolution, the War of 1812, all sorts of, any war, basically. They would send some soldiers back, and somehow they would have a little conflict during this war, and it would, they'd decide who won, and then in the future, whoever's soldiers came out on top, they got their way. Basically, something like that. And then there were these essentially time cops who would make sure that the past didn't get messed up. And what Simon Hawke did in these books, he took a bunch of classics and used those as the backdrop. The one I remember most vividly was the Pimpernel plot. And so French Revolution, the Scarlet Pimpernel, something was going on. Some aristocrats were trying to get out of the country, maybe. Don't remember those details, but one of these soldiers from the future got involved in an altercation, and the Scarlet Pimpernel ended up being killed, which of course would change the future. So these time cops are sent back. They take over. In this case, one of them becomes the Scarlet Pimpernel. They sort of knock out the people closest to that person and take over their lives temporarily until they can get the timeline back on track. All right, so the Ivanhoe Gambit, essentially that sort of thing, but with Ivanhoe. He did the Three Musketeers, Ivanhoe, Scarlet Pimpernel. I know there's one with the Nautilus. Can't remember all of them, but they were essentially, that was sort of the setup. Something happened in one of these classic stories that was their history, and these time cops had to go back and fix it. And it was very interesting to see he follows the classic stories, but there's little branches and little changes because, history was changed. It's pretty interesting. The Ivanhoe Gambit by Simon Hawke. Next, another one that I have. I only have 2 covers this time. Next, we have Thuvia, Made of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is the copy I have. You can see it's book 4. And I mentioned in an earlier video that I like to have my sets, when it's a series, I like to have the same covers, essentially. And fortunately, I do have all of the Mars books with these covers. There's the back, pretty cool. I absolutely love these covers. I love the artwork. I mean, it's good, pulpy goodness that takes place on Mars with, I'm sorry, little pause there, a little too long. I'm not sure John Carter is necessarily in this one. I'd have to reread it, which I will do someday. But huge fan of the old Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff. Huge fan of the John Carter stuff. And that's number 4, Thuvia Made of Mars. And then finally, our last book for the month is Pale Rider by Alan Dean Foster. And this is just a novelization of the Clint Eastwood movie Pale Rider. I enjoyed the movie. It's in the vein of his spaghetti westerns with Sergio Leone. Not quite up to that quality, but you can see the influences, and I believe Eastwood directed it as well as starred in it. But again, this is just the novelization by Alan Dean Foster. So, you know, a decent read. He's a good writer. He did a lot of novelizations. I mentioned that, I think, in the last video, or maybe a video before that. I don't know. So that's it. Those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books that I read in May of 1985. So feel free to comment below, talk about this stuff. If you've read any of these, maybe tell me what your thoughts on John Saul are. There may be, well, I think there's at least one more John Saul in here, but I kind of gave up on him after just a few books. Have you read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the rest of that series? What do you think? I know some people don't think they're that funny. Yeah, let's just chat about books. And so please comment below. Please like, share, and subscribe. That's it. Until next week, read more books.